Section 7.1 Interactive Assignment, Objective 1. The graph to the right is the uniform probability density function for a friend who is X minutes late. In part A, we want to find the probability that the friend is between 10 and 25 minutes late. And then in part B, it is 10 a.m. There is a 30% probability that the friend will arrive with how many minutes? Okay, so first let's take a look here. What we have is the following. Here is our uniform probability density function. We can see here that the y-axis represents the density part, and it's going from 0 to 1 over 30. The x-axis is the time in minutes. So we have 0 minutes, this would represent 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 20, 25, and 30. Okay, so in this case here, we want to find the probability that the friend is between 10 and 25 minutes late. So let's go ahead and draw a line from 10 minutes all the way up to there. And then we also have 25 minutes. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to put up there 25 minutes. Okay, and then let's go ahead and just fill in what our two values represent. We know this is 10 and then this is 25 minutes. Okay, and then what we want to do is we want to find the area of the shaded region, meaning that we want to find the area of this entire rectangle. Okay, so we're looking for the area of this rectangle. Okay, so now if we want to find the area of this rectangle, well, in order to find the area of the rectangle, we know what the formula is for that, and that is finding the density times the length of the time. So let's go ahead and take a look at that here. So over to the right, again, the area under the graph of the density function over an interval represents the probability of observing a value of the random variable in that interval. The probability that the friend is more than 10 minutes late but less than 25 minutes late is the area under the uniform density function between 10 minutes and 25 minutes. Okay, so what do we know about that? We know that also, what is the distance from 10 to 25 minutes? Well, what we're going to do now is we need to find out from the graph in the previous step, the length of time of the time interval is 25 minus 10, which is 15 minutes. So therefore, this is going to represent 15 minutes. Okay? And so now what we want to do is, in order to find the area of the shaded rectangle, we're going to rounding to 3 decimal places. The area is the product of the interval length and the density. Okay, so the area, okay, we know that we shaded it green, is A, and that's going to equal the interval length. Well, what is the interval length? Well, we determined that the interval length was 25 minus 10, which is 15 minutes. So we know what the interval length is. And then what is the density? Well, the density is this distance, and the density goes from 0 to 1 over 30. So now let's go ahead and fill in our formula to find the area of that. Well, again, we know that the interval length is 15, and we know that the density is 1 over 30. Okay, so now if we take that 15 and multiply it by 1, and that's over 30, so that's 15 over 30. When we reduce that fraction, we get 1 over 2. Now again, they want us to then find this, rounding it to 3 decimal places. So 1 over 2 is the same thing as 0.5 and then 0, 0. Therefore, the probability that the friend is between 10 and 25 minutes late is 0.500. So going back to our question, we can see that that is what we get. We get, again, rounding it to 3 decimal places, 0.500. Okay, now the next question wants us to find out, it is 10 a.m. and there is a 30% probability that the friend will arrive within how many minutes? So in this question here, it's asking us how many minutes, meaning that we need to find out how many minutes there are. So the first thing we need to do is, okay, if there is a 30% probability, that means that we're going to have a rectangle, okay, and where does that rectangle begin? Well, that rectangle we know is 30%. So what do we know about 30%? Well, we know that 30% is 0.30. So we need to find out, okay, what do we need to know? Well, we know that the area that is 30%, meaning, okay, if we're looking for 30% of the probability, so that means that 30% is the same thing as the area of 0.30. Okay, so let's go ahead and shade in that. Well, that means that we're looking for this rectangle that represents 30%. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to find out what is this x value down here that we don't know. We're going to call it x subscript 0. So keep in mind that this x subscript 0 represents the minutes, because that's what we want to find. We want to find out how many minutes there are. Okay, so to determine the number of minutes that would result in this probability, again, we calculate the width of the interval within the rectangle so that the area of the rectangle is 30% or is equal to 0.30, which we've already done. Okay, now in order to find the length of the interval, the area is the product of the length of the interval, x subscript 0, and the density. Okay, so we're going to use the formula that we did above. Okay, but what do we know? We know what the area is. We know that the area, again, is representative of our 30%. Okay, we also know that the density goes from 0 to 1 over 30, so we know what the density is. So now what we're looking for is the time interval. Okay, so what do we know? Well, we know that the density represents 1 over 30. Okay, we also know that the area is 0.30. Okay, now if we want to solve for the value of x, what we're going to have to do is we're going to multiply it by the reciprocal or the value of 1 over 30. Well, the reciprocal of 1 over 30 is 30, so we're going to multiply both sides by the value of 30. So we're going to multiply both sides by 30, okay? Now keep in mind here that when we multiply both sides by 30, on the left side, this is the same thing as 30 over 1. So we're going to simplify this 30. So what we get over here on the left side is x subscript 0 times 1. So we have x subscript 0, and then we have 30 times 0.30. And that's what we have on the right side. Now when we multiply 30 times 0.30, we end up getting 9. So therefore, there is a 30% probability that the friend will arrive within 9 minutes. So technically this line, okay, even though that I approximated it, should be below that 10, right? And we know that this represents our value of x subscript 0. So again, we were just estimating it first, but then once we found the result, we know that that's going to equal 9. So therefore, we can then, erase what was left of this shaded part here. Okay, so we can erase this shaded part. So we know that the shaded part now represents the value of 0.30. Okay, and I'll go ahead and put that 0.30 back up there just so that we can make sure that that represents what we were shading here and what we're erasing. So again, remember that the area now represents 0.30 here, and we found that the minutes to be 9. So let's go back to our question. We will see that the answer then, there is a 30% probability that the friend will arrive within 9 minutes, and we type the whole number being 9.